Two stories of healing in our gospel passage that we just heard. But I think there is something more important in one sense than their healing. Two individuals who come from different spectrums of society. Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, and a woman, if you can imagine, who's had a hemorrhage for 12 years. And I can sort of imagine her fighting her way through the crowd. She would be considered unclean. So people would be avoiding touching her. She fights through just to touch the hem of his garments, believing that in so doing she would be healed. To me, what's important about both of these individuals for our being and understanding is that they were both vulnerable. Jairus, the ruler of the synagogue, comes to Jesus. He should not be caught doing that. And yet he comes, admitting that there is nothing by himself that he can do, and throwing himself on the mercy of Jesus. And again, the woman, who doesn't care that people consider her unclean, she fights through, believing that if she just touches the hem, she will be healed. Of course, we know the end of the story. Both end well. The woman is healed of her hemorrhage, and Jairus' daughter is made whole. Stories of vulnerability. As I thought about that, I think, we aren't very comfortable with vulnerability in our world. I don't like to admit my own vulnerability, and I suspect you aren't much better about that. I think we want to project an image that somehow we've got it all together. When we really don't. And Madeline L'Engle once said that those walls that we build around us showing that we have it all together may be what keeps people from coming to us. They are the walls of our churches, and they're our own individual walls that somehow separate us from the poor, from those who are on the fringes of society and really don't have it all together, and we don't either. But that's what we want people to think, don't we? Jesus says, you don't have it all together. Don't let that keep people from coming to you. As I thought about that, I was reminded of one sunny day, having heat much like we are having now. This was several years ago at St. James the Fisherman in Shalot, and we were having sort of a picnic in the parish hall after the service. And at that time there were two buildings, and there was a sidewalk that came down the middle, and we were all gathered in the parish hall, busy eating our food and conversing with one another. And down that sidewalk came, obviously, a homeless person. His clothes were tattered. He needed a shave. He smelled. And suddenly, someone from the parish ran out and put their arms around him and invited him in. And then there was a crowd around him as they took him and gave him a plate and heaped food on it. They took him to a table and sat down with him and broke bread with him. That man must have had incredible courage to come down that sidewalk that day and say, "Here I am, take me as I am." He made himself vulnerable. And you know what? The people of the congregation made themselves vulnerable too. For they went in and welcomed him and made him a part of their own being. I don't know how many of you saw the replay of the services at Mother Emanuel Church last Sunday. And the pastor stood up and he said, "I want you to turn and I want you to hug 3 people closest to you." And that place was filled with such joy. As people gave up their individual walls and their barriers and they reached out to one another, black to white, male to female, female to male, I don't know, I suspect gay to straight. They all were one, and that place was filled with Christian joy, despite everything that had gone on. They had let their barriers down. The walls were gone. They were simply people that loved God and each other. David Lose, writing in an article called "Come As You Are," says this to us today, and I say it to you and to me. Let us make a pledge to become the kind of community which accepts our limitations and honors vulnerability, and in this way become the kind of community where we really do come as we are, rather than keep pretending to be the person we think others expect or want us to be. Let the walls down. Let the barriers go. Invite people into your life, and let us rejoice in the love of God. Amen.
Amen.